Lennox Easton didn't do karaoke at least. That's what everyone at the Silver Note Lounge thought until he stood up, rolled up the sleeves of his tailored black shirt, and walked to the mic like he owned the place. The chatter died instantly. Not because the crowd knew who he was, most didn't. To them, he looked like just another tall, broad-shouldered guy with sharp eyes and a sharper jawline. But to those who did know, like his assistant trying not to faint in the corner, it was shocking. Lennox Easton, the reclusive tech millionaire who avoided public attention like the plague, was about to sing. Olive Emerson wasn't impressed. She sat at the back, half focused on her sketchpad, half listening to the buzz growing around her. Her best friend, Priya, nudged her hard. "Girl, put the pencil down. That man is pure sin in human form." Olive glanced up just as Lennox took the mic. He didn't look nervous, just tired, like someone who carried too much on his shoulders. There was something almost lonely about him. Then he started singing. It wasn't perfect. His voice cracked a little on the high notes, rough around the edges, but rich and deep. He sang "Can't Help Falling in Love," slow and stripped down, like he meant every word. Her pencil dropped. When it ended, the room erupted. Lennox gave a tight nod, handed the mic back, and started walking back toward the bar. His eyes scanned the crowd until they landed on her. She looked away too fast. He still walked straight toward her. "Hi," he said, stopping in front of her table. Priya's eyes widened. "Oh my God." Olive blinked. "Hi. I'm Lennox." She raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, I figured after the 5 women yelling your name during the applause." He laughed for the first time that night. "You didn't yell." "I don't yell for men I don't know." "Fair," he said, pulling out the chair beside her. "Then let's fix that." He sat down. Just like that. Like he didn't care that he was probably the most out-of-place man in this dive bar. "I'm Olive. I'm not impressed by surprise karaoke stunts." He leaned in slightly. Wasn't trying to impress anyone. She met his gaze. "Then why'd you do it?" His smile faded a little. "Because sometimes you need to stop thinking and just feel something." That shut her up. They talked. And talked. About music, about art, about why she loved sketching strangers who had no idea they were being drawn. He asked questions like he actually cared. She didn't know who he was beyond a guy named Lennox in an expensive-looking watch and shoes that probably cost more than her rent. He didn't flirt, not really. But the way he looked at her like she was the first real thing he'd seen in a long time made her heart thud harder than she wanted it to. "Come with me tomorrow," he said, suddenly standing. She blinked. "Where?" "To dinner." She laughed. "You don't even know what I like to eat. I'll take you somewhere that has everything." "You always this confident?" He paused, then said quietly, "No. Just with you, apparently." That got her. She hesitated, then nodded. "Okay. One dinner." He grinned, and it did something to her chest. He handed her a simple black card with the driver's name on it. "He'll pick you up at 7. She looked at the card, then back up, but he was already walking out. That night, Olive couldn't sleep. It wasn't just the way he sang or the way he looked at her like she was a secret he needed to learn. It was the way he made her feel seen. Like more than a girl with a sketchbook and a broken past. The next evening, a sleek black SUV pulled up outside her apartment building. The driver opened the door without a word. She debated backing out, but her gut told her not to. She wore a simple black dress that made her feel like herself. No frills. No pretending. The car pulled through a private gate. Her eyes widened as the building came into view. It wasn't a restaurant. It was a rooftop. A rooftop with white lanterns strung across. A long table covered in candles. And a view of the city that didn't seem real. Lennox stood by the edge, wearing a dark navy suit. No tie, sleeves rolled. He turned when he heard her heels. "You made it," he said, his eyes warm. "What is this?" "I asked them to set this up. I wanted to talk. Without noise. You could have taken me to a coffee shop. I don't like coffee shops. And I don't think you're the kind of girl who gets treated the way she deserves." She stared at him. "And how's that? With everything?" Dinner was a blur of laughter and questions that felt too intimate for a second date, except it wasn't really a date, was it? It was something else. Something fast and intense and dangerous. He didn't talk about work. She didn't ask. But when the servers brought out the third course and it was flown in from Italy, she finally asked, "Okay, who are you really?" He looked at her for a long moment, then said, "Lennox Easton, founder of Easton Plus." She froze. "No. Like the tech company Easton Plus?" He nodded. Her jaw dropped. "You're a millionaire?" He tilted his head. "Does that change anything?" Yes? No? I don't know. Good. Because I didn't want you to like me because of that." She pressed a hand to her chest. "I don't even know if I like you yet." He leaned closer. Liar. She hated that he was right. After dinner, he walked her to the elevator. She turned to him, heart pounding. This was insane. He nodded. "I know. But it was. Nice." He stepped into her space. "Olive." Her breath caught. She looked up. "If I kiss you right now, I'm not going to be able to stop thinking about you." She swallowed. "Then don't kiss me." He smiled. Too late. And then he kissed her slow, warm, and full of a promise she didn't understand yet. Her fingers curled into the front of his shirt as his hands slid around her waist like he already knew every curve by memory. When they pulled apart, she whispered, "This is going to ruin me." He rested his forehead against hers. "Then we'll ruin each other." And somehow that felt like the best beginning she never saw coming. The rain started just as Olive stepped out of her building the next morning. It wasn't a soft drizzle, it came down in sheets, soaking through her canvas tote and the edges of her jeans before she reached the awning of the cafe on 12th and Vine. She hadn't planned on seeing Lennox again so soon. In fact, she'd spent half the night convincing herself that one dinner, however surreal, was enough. But the other half of the night she'd spent staring at the ceiling, replaying the way he'd said her name like it meant something. She hadn't drawn a single line since then. Inside the cafe, she ordered a black tea and tried to shake the water from her sleeves. The barista handed over her cup with a tired smile, but before Olive could turn around, someone stepped through the doorway behind her, shaking the rain from a dark coat. "Olive?" She turned slowly. Lennox's hair was damp, beads of water clinging to his jaw. His coat was expensive, of course it was, but it was the look in his eyes that stopped her. Not intensity. Not flotation. Just quiet surprise, like he hadn't expected to find her here and hadn't planned what to do now that he had. "I didn't mean to interrupt," he said, stepping to the side so others could pass. "You didn't." She gestured toward the only available table in the corner. "You're already wet. Might as well sit." He hesitated, then followed. They sat in silence for a few heartbeats, the rain drumming steadily outside. "I wasn't following you," he offered. "Didn't think you were. I just needed tea." She glanced at his cup. "You didn't order anything." "I forgot how to speak when I saw you." "Don't do that," she said softly, wrapping her hands around the warm ceramic. "Don't say things like that unless you mean them." "I don't say anything I don't mean." She looked at him, then really looked. He seemed more relaxed in the daylight, but there was a weariness around his eyes like he hadn't slept either. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "I want to see you again. You don't even know me." "I'd like to." "And then what?" She took a sip of her tea. "You'll get bored? Move on to the next woman who doesn't know who you are." "That's not what this is." "Then what is it?" He didn't answer right away. The hum of conversation around them filled the space between. "I'm not used to doing this. Starting something without knowing the outcome. Most people call that life." He smiled faintly. "I call it risk." She traced the rim of her cup. "What do you want from me, Lennox?" "I don't know yet," he said quietly. "But I know I haven't stopped thinking about you since the moment I walked away." She felt her pulse shift, a slow building ache in her chest. "I have work," she said, standing. "I'll drive you." "No," he stood too. "Then let me walk with you." She hesitated. "Fine." But no more rooftop dinners. No promises. They walked in silence through the rain, his coat sheltering her from most of it. When they reached the studio, she paused at the door. "I teach a class in 10 minutes. He nodded. "Can I pick you up afterward?" "Why?" "I want to show you something." She narrowed her eyes. "What kind of something?" "Nothing that involves helicopters. Just trust me." She studied him for a long second, then gave a short nod. Fine. But if this is some kind of trap, I carry pepper spray. He raised his hands. Duly noted. 2 hours later, Olive stepped outside to find the same black SUV idling at the curb. Lennox waited beside it, sunglasses on despite the overcast sky. He opened the door for her without a word. I usually take the subway, she muttered, sliding onto the leather seat. I know. You've looked me up? He joined her inside. Only enough to know where to find you. Creepy. Practical. The car pulled into traffic. She glanced at him. So? Where are we going? You'll see. 20 minutes later, the SUV stopped outside an industrial building in the warehouse district. Not abandoned, but definitely not chic. Lennox stepped out first and opened her door. This better not be an underground fight club. He smiled. Not quite. Inside, the space opened into a massive loft with exposed beams and tall windows. Sunlight filtered through the clouds, casting a pale glow onto the concrete floor. What is this? He walked ahead, flicking on a row of lights. The space came alive: easels, blank canvases, a drafting table in the corner. Supplies still sealed. A sink with a deep basin. A wall of empty frames. It's yours, he said simply. She turned to him, stunned. What? A studio. For you. To draw, paint, whatever. No rent. No strings. She shook her head. I can't accept this. You don't have to. But it's here if you want it. Why would you do this? Because I've seen your sketches. And I know what it's like to have talent and no space. You don't know anything about my life. You're right. But I want to. And this is my way of saying I'm not going anywhere. She stared at him. Her chest ached with the weight of something too big to name. I didn't ask for this. No, he said, stepping closer. But you deserve it. When she didn't respond, he added gently, This isn't a transaction, Olive. It's a beginning. She looked around the studio, then back at him. You're serious. Deadly. Her voice was barely above a whisper. You don't even know if I'm worth it. I do, he said, because I've never done this for anyone else. She looked away, heart pounding. You're making it hard to walk away, she said. Then don't. She stepped back, shaking her head. I need time. I'll wait. He didn't try to touch her, didn't press. Just handed her the keys to the studio and walked out of the building, leaving her alone in the quiet, surrounded by blank canvases and the overwhelming sense that her life had just shifted direction without her permission. And still, she didn't hate it. Olive's fingers hovered over the blank sketchpad, pencil poised but unmoving. The studio Lennox had given her was quiet, except for the occasional creak of the beams above and the soft patter of rain against the tall windows. She'd come back 3 times over the past week, each time intending to draw and each time leaving without a single mark on the page. She hated what it meant how much his gift had unsettled her. It wasn't the space itself. That part was perfect. It was the fact that it had come from him. From a man who looked her in the eye and said he wanted to learn her, not own her. And yet here she was, feeling occupied anyway. The door creaked behind her. I knocked, Lennox said. Twice. She turned, already knowing it was him. He wore a gray cashmere sweater and dark jeans, his hair slightly tousled from the wind. He held a paper bag in one hand and a thermos in the other. I brought lunch. Thought I'd distract you. She didn't move from her stool. You always show up unannounced? I figured you'd lock the door if you didn't want to be interrupted. She exhaled through her nose. You're not wrong. He held up the bag. There's roasted tomato soup and a sandwich with mozzarella and basil. I asked the chef for something artist-friendly. Whatever that means. She eyed him. You really don't hear the word no often, do you? I hear it all the time, he said easily, setting the food down on the side table. I just don't always agree with it. She finally stood, arms crossed, watching as he laid out 2 napkins. His ease rattled her. People didn't just walk into her space and act like they belonged. No one ever had. I haven't drawn anything, she admitted. I didn't come to check your progress. Then what did you come for? He looked at her, steady and unflinching. To see if you're okay. I'm fine. No, you're not. You look like you've been pacing in your head for days. She hesitated, then sat across from him. You're not like anyone I've met. Is that a good thing? It's a dangerous thing. He leaned back slightly, reaching for the thermos. People treat danger like it's a red light, but sometimes it's just a warning to pay attention. She took the soup he offered, warming her hands on the container. I don't know how to do this, she said. Be in a relationship? Be in something real with someone who could walk away any second and not even flinch. I would flinch, he said without hesitation. I'd flinch so hard I wouldn't know how to breathe. Her throat tightened. She looked away. You barely know me. He didn't argue. He just said, tell me something you've never told anyone. She blinked. Why? Because I want to know the version of you that never makes it onto paper. She stared at the soup before whispering. I used to sneak into the art museum downtown when I was 16. Couldn't afford the ticket, so I climbed the fire escape and slipped in through the maintenance door when the guards changed shifts. He smiled faintly. What did you look at? Everything. But I always ended up in front of the same portrait. A woman in red, sitting in a chair, looking like she was waiting for someone who'd never come. Why her? Because I felt like her. Lennox didn't say anything for a while. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. I bought that painting last year. Her head snapped up. What? It's in my apartment. I didn't know why I needed it. I just did. Now I do. The air between them shifted, thick with something that wasn't attraction, not just that. It was recognition. She set the soup down and stood abruptly. I need air. He followed her to the window, watching as she pushed it open. The rain had stopped, but the scent of wet pavement clung to the breeze. You scare me, she said, not looking at him. I scare myself when I'm with you, he admitted. She turned slowly, facing him. I don't want to be someone you fix. I don't want to fix you. I want to stand beside you while you build whatever the hell you want. Her voice cracked. No one's ever said that to me. He closed the distance between them, but didn't touch her. They should have. They stood like that for what felt like hours. The city humming below, the ache between them growing louder than the silence. He finally reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. I want you to come with me this weekend. She blinked. Where? There's a charity event. Gala, technically. I'm the keynote. I hate those things. But I won't hate it if you're there. Her laugh was dry. Do I look like someone who owns a gown? I had one delivered to the studio. It's in the back closet. What? Just in case you said yes. She narrowed her eyes. You're not subtle. I'm not trying to be. She studied him, weighing the madness of it all. The rooftop dinner. The studio. The painting. Now this. I don't belong in your world. He stepped closer, gaze steady. Then let's make a new one. She didn't answer. That night, she went to the back closet. The gown was deep sapphire, simple but elegant, the fabric fluid like water. Next to it hung a small card that read, "Only if you want to." She sat on the floor, staring at it for a long time. The next night, she emerged from the car in front of the gala, her heart pounding harder than it ever had before. Paparazzi lights flashed, and she almost turned back. But then she saw him. Lennox waiting by the entrance, dressed in a black tux, his eyes scanning the crowd until they found her. He didn't smile. He just walked forward, took her hand, and whispered, "You came." She looked up at him, her voice trembling. "I'm terrified." "So am I," he said, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "But let's be terrified together." And as they stepped into the glittering ballroom, hand in hand, the world didn't feel so impossible anymore. The scent of roses and expensive cologne clung to the air as they stepped off the ballroom floor. The gala had been a whirlwind of introductions, shifting stares, and whispered speculations. Olive hadn't spoken much, there hadn't been time. Lennox had been pulled in every direction, pressed between bankers, CEOs, and socialites who smiled too wide and asked too many questions. Still, his hand had never left hers. Now, tucked into a quiet corridor behind the main hall, the noise softened to a distant hum. She leaned against the cold marble wall, her heels pinching slightly, but she didn't show it. Lennox watched her. His tie loosened just enough to suggest rebellion. "You handled that like you've been doing it your whole life," he said. "I used to work coat check at a place like this. I got good at pretending." He moved closer. "You weren't pretending. You were surviving." She tilted her head. "You always talk like you're writing poetry." He leaned one shoulder against the wall beside her. "You always listen like you're trying to draw what I'm not saying. I'm still trying to decide if you mean half the things that come out of your mouth." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small envelope. "Then maybe this will help." She took it carefully, unfolding the flap. Inside was a plane ticket. One way. Destination: Florence. She looked up sharply. "What is this? You said once you wanted to see Botticelli's original works in person." I remembered. Her fingers tightened around the paper. "You're giving me Italy?" "No," he said, voice low. "I'm offering you the choice. The freedom to go. You don't owe me a thing. You don't even have to tell me yes. I can't just disappear." "You wouldn't be disappearing. You'd be living." She studied him, the quiet certainty in his posture, the way his eyes didn't flinch from hers. "Why are you really giving this to me?" "Because I've spent most of my life building things that didn't matter. You're the first thing that does." She folded the ticket, slid it back into the envelope. "If I say yes, do you come with me?" "I'll follow you anywhere." A voice echoed down the corridor, calling Lennox's name. He didn't move. "Go," she said. "They're waiting." "I don't care." "I do. Go be charming and powerful and all the things they need you to be. And you. I'll be here, deciding." He brushed her hand with his fingers before turning away. She watched him disappear into the gold-lit hallway, her chest hollow and full at the same time. The next morning, she stood alone in the studio, suitcase unzipped at her feet. The open envelope sat on the table beside a stack of worn sketchbooks. Her passport, untouched since college, peeked out from a drawer. She turned when someone knocked. It wasn't Lennox. It was Priya, holding a small coffee and a bigger grin. "You really going to Italy with the world's most emotionally literate millionaire?" Olive shook her head. "I haven't decided." Priya handed her the cup. "Then decide fast. You've been sleepwalking since the night you met him. This is the first time you've looked awake." Olive glanced at the dress hanging near the window, still draped over the back of a chair. "I don't want to lose myself in someone else's world." "Then don't. Build one with him." That afternoon, she sent Lennox a message through his assistant, short, direct, and without flourish: "Meet me where you first saw me." By the time she reached the Silvernote Lounge, the sun was low. The place was nearly empty, the bartender wiping down the counter, the old jukebox humming idle in the corner. Lennox sat in the same booth she'd been in the night he sang. He stood the moment he saw her. "I was hoping you meant this place," he said. "I was hoping you'd remember." He stepped closer. "I remember everything." She held out the envelope. "I'm not taking the ticket." His expression flickered. "Okay." She let the silence stretch before adding, "Because if I go, I want you to come too. Not later. Now." He blinked. "You're serious?" "I want to draw the Arno at sunset. I want to see things I've only studied in books. But I don't want to do it alone. I want to see them with you." He reached for her hand, gripping it like a lifeline. "Then we'll go together. And not just for a weekend," she added. "For as long as it takes to feel like we're not chasing something anymore." He nodded. "Done." She laughed, breathless. "You can't just walk away from your life. I already did the moment I saw you sketching in the corner of a dive bar." He pulled out his phone, tapped a few things, then pocketed it. "What was that?" she asked. "Canceling everything. Rescheduling the gala follow-ups. Freeing up my calendar for the next month. Just like that." He shrugged. "I built my life to be flexible. I just never had a reason to use it." She stared at him for a long moment, then said, "We're going to get it wrong. Probably. We'll argue. Most definitely. But we'll also get to wake up in Florence and drink bitter espresso and fight over who gets the last biscotti." He grinned, and it wasn't the polished smile he gave at galas. It was real, crooked, almost boyish. "I only share biscotti with people who steal my heart." She reached for his collar and pulled him toward her, kissing him hard and fast, right there in the middle of the empty lounge. When they parted, her voice was quiet. Then I better earn it. He leaned his forehead against hers. You already did. They left the lounge as the streetlights flickered on. Her sketchbook tucked under her arm, his hand warm around hers. 3 days later, they stood on a balcony in Florence, city lights glowing beneath them, her laughter echoing off the stone walls. He poured her wine. She sketched him in the fading light. They argued about whether the pasta in Rome would be better. He kissed her mid-sentence. And in that moment, they weren't chasing anything. They had already arrived. The sounds of the city faded beneath the echo of Olive's pencil moving across the page. She sat barefoot on the cool stone floor of their apartment, knees drawn up, a plate of half-eaten figs beside her. The doors to the terrace were open, letting in the late morning breeze that carried the scent of espresso and spring blossoms. Florence was quieter today, or maybe she had finally learned how to listen differently. Lennox stepped out of the bedroom, towel drying his hair, his shirt clinging slightly to his skin from the shower. He paused when he saw her. You didn't sleep. I didn't need to, she said without looking up. It's the first time in a while I didn't wake up with something clawing at my chest. He crossed the room, crouched beside her. Let me see what you're working on. She tilted the sketch pad so he could view it. It wasn't a portrait of him or the view or even the city. It was a drawing of a woman seated in a train station, bags piled around her, a ticket in her hand and a quiet steadiness in her eyes. Who is she? He asked. Me, she said. Before I met you. I used to draw what I wished I looked like. Now I draw what I feel. He leaned in and kissed her shoulder. I like her, but I like the one who's here more. There was no heat in his words, just warmth. That was the new thing between them. The fire hadn't dulled, but it had steadied. There were no more sharp edges in their silences. No more questions about what this was. They knew now. They didn't have to name it. I got a message from the museum, she said quietly. He didn't move. You submitted? I sent them 2 pieces. They want to feature both in a rotating exhibit for upcoming artists. His hand slid to her back. You're not upcoming. You've arrived. She turned to face him. Do you worry? About? That this is too much of a dream. That it'll slip. He considered her. I used to. I don't anymore. Why not? Because I finally built something I don't want to run from. She watched him. You don't miss the noise? I still have it. My team sends updates. I take calls when I need to. But the noise isn't in my head anymore. They sat in silence, the kind that felt earned. Later that afternoon, they wandered through a street market tucked between 2 narrow alleys. Olive picked through hand-stitched leather notebooks while Lennox negotiated with a vendor for a hand-painted ceramic mug shaped like a cat. It was hideous. She loved it immediately. You're getting better at haggling, she said, looping her arm through his. I had a good teacher. He kissed the top of her head. You're ruthless. I like fair trades. Then I should warn you, he said, pulling her to a stop near a fountain. I'm about to give you something completely unfair. She tilted her head. What now? He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. It was thick, aged at the edges, handwritten. She opened it slowly. It was a letter. From her mother. She froze. I found it, he said gently. She gave it to the owner of the art shop she used to visit. He kept it in a box of unclaimed items. I only knew to ask because you mentioned the shop once and I called in a favor. Her hands trembled as she read. It wasn't long. Just a few sentences. But it was everything she hadn't known she needed. She wrote this before she passed? Olive whispered. Yes. She said she believed I'd find my way. That she knew I'd make something beautiful out of the mess. Lennox cupped her cheek. She was right. Tears slipped silently down her face. He didn't say anything else. Just held her, right there in the middle of the street, while the rest of the world moved around them. That night, they cooked dinner together. He burned the garlic. She overcooked the pasta. It didn't matter. They danced to a scratchy record, barefoot and messy and laughing so hard her ribs hurt. Afterward, he pulled her into his lap on the couch, her legs draped over his, her fingers playing with the buttons of his shirt. I want to ask you something, he said. If it involves another surprise plane ticket, I might throw you off this balcony. He laughed. No planes. She looked up at him. He reached into the cushion beside him and pulled out a small box. Simple. Velvet. No flesh. Her breath caught. I don't want this to be a chapter, he said. I want it to be the spine. The thing everything else rests on. She opened the box. The ring was delicate. A single stone. Timeless. He didn't ask. She didn't answer with words. She kissed him, long and sure and full of all the things she hadn't known how to say until now. Weeks passed. The museum exhibit opened. She stood beside her own work, watching strangers study it, their faces softening as they absorbed what she had poured into the canvas. Lennox never left her side. He didn't try to steal the spotlight. He just held her hand and let her shine. They married in Florence, in the courtyard of a small chapel covered in blooming vines. Priya cried through the entire ceremony. The officiant forgot Olive's name once. Lennox whispered the wrong vowel during his vow and had to start over. It was perfect. They didn't fly anywhere afterward. They walked home, barefoot, in wedding clothes, through cobblestone streets and the scent of jasmine. Their apartment filled with canvases and laughter and the occasional flying sock when one of them lost a bet. They argued over paint colors and whether or not gelato counted as dinner. They slept tangled together, limbs a mess of comfort and heat. And one morning, a year later, Olive opened the front door to find a small package on the stoop. No label. No note. Just a sketchbook filled with blank pages. She smiled. He came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. New story? He asked. She leaned back into him. No. Same story. Still want to add to it? Every day. And so they did. Together.